Periodic events such as waves breaking on the shore, pulsations of the heart, etc., occur on a permanent regime, meaning that their state does not change as long as none of their parameters vary. The reasonably immutable translation of planets around their stars, or the stars around the centers of their galaxies, generates gravitational waves on a permanent regime, as I show in my previous video. Gravitational waves, part of, are sinusoidal shaped. On the other hand, unique events such as a broken bulb when it falls, the heating of the iron, the extinction of the bell's toll, and so on, occur on a transient regime, which means that the event, having undergone a variation of some of its parameters, changes between an initial state and a final state. Gravitational waves on transient regime are caused by unique events such as the explosion of supernovae, black holes, or neutron stars formation, collision of sidereal bodies or galaxies, etc. In particular, the collision of two black holes was what the LIGO Observatory detected in September 2015, confirming the existence of transient gravitational waves. In fact, two black holes colliding is an event which generates two types of gravitational waves, as their respective translations to the destined collision point are generating them on a permanent regime, and it is at the very instant of the shock that the powerful pulse of a transient wave is generated. The integration of the colliding masses, preserving the energies, momentum, and all parameters of classical mechanics, will determine the new translation path of the resulting object, which will generate the permanent regime of the associated translation gravitational waves. Huge periods of translation gravitational waves make them difficult to detect. Although the gravitational waves of the tides on Earth are close to one another and of significant intensity, it is difficult to measure them by laser interferometry means, because the tides themselves deform the ocean and Earth's curvature, altering the geometry of the instrument. This in addition to other technological difficulties. That is why the detection of the waves was by means of measuring an intense but brief transient gravitational pulse and not by some translation permanent regimen wave. Any amount of matter moving emits waves according to de Broglie's equation, valid equation for both linear and angular momenta. The rotation of a solid, such as the Earth, possesses a defined angular momentum, while the Sun's plasma has a surface rotation period of 24 terrestrial days at the equator. The rotational velocity of objects in the universe is generally several orders of magnitude lower than their respective translation velocities. Those same orders of magnitude are preserved between the frequencies of the waves emitted by rotation versus translation. In conclusion, any displacement of matter through the universe emits simultaneously huge period sinusoidal gravitational waves belonging to the lower end of the spectrum on one hand and, on the other hand, according to de Broglie, waves whose periods are infinitesimal and belonging to the upper end of the spectrum, due to linear and angular momentum. I am firmly convinced that these emissions are accompanied by their corresponding harmonics. Thus, the universe is a continuum of overlapping gravitational waves on both permanent and transient regimes.